Once upon a time, there was a cute little shapeshifter named Socio. Unlike her siblings, who were born with spotless, snowy white fur, Socio had a unique appearance. Her soft coat was speckled with splotches of black, making her stand out in the family. As a young rabbit, Socio's distinctive look became a source of endless teasing. Her siblings would often laugh and poke fun at her, calling her names and telling her she didn't belong. The other rabbits whispered about her, their voices filled with scorn and superstition. One day, as Socio passed by a group of young female rabbits, she overheard them talking in hushed, mocking tones. "Maybe she's meant to be with the black serpent that lives in the cave," one rabbit snickered, her voice filled with mischief. She nudged her friend with a smirk. After all, how could she be the only one with black spots? The other girls burst into laughter, their giggles harsh and unkind. Yes, that wicked serpent could be her fated mate, another teased, rolling her eyes dramatically as if it were the most ridiculous thing in the world. Socio's heart clenched, and she felt her cheeks grow warm with embarrassment. Tears began to prick at the corners of her eyes, but she held them back, not wanting to show weakness. Yet, their words stung deeply, burrowing into her heart. "Come on, let's go," one of the girls whispered to the others, casting a wary glance at Socio. "If we stay near her, we might end up as his dinner. Let's just stay away from Socio." The group giggled again, casting glances of pity and disgust at Socio before hopping away, their laughter echoing behind them. Socio was left standing there, bewildered and hurt. She couldn't understand why they saw her black spots as something to fear or ridicule. As she watched them hop away, the harsh words echoed in her mind. Could it really be true? She wondered, her heart sinking. Maybe I am meant for the serpent. Despite the sadness weighing down her heart, she couldn't help but believe their cruel words, letting their taunts chip away at her spirit little by little. Socio had always been a little different, a little lonely. She thought back to her childhood, where her parents, indifferent to her existence, had birthed litter after litter of perfect, white-furred siblings every mating season. She was always the odd one, the one with splotches of black that marked her as strange. Her parents barely noticed her, let alone doted on her, and so the idea that she might be destined for something different, something dark, didn't seem too far-fetched. Without really understanding the customs of her kind, Socio began to believe the other rabbits' taunts, that her fated mate was the black serpent who lived in a cave nearby. The snake was a terrifying figure in the rabbit community, known for his appetite for rabbits. He was a creature of legend and fear, and many of the rabbits would shudder just at the mention of him. But as time passed and mating season approached, Socio felt an odd sense of determination. If this was her fate, then she would face it head-on. She gathered a bundle of dry grass, her small back weighed down by the stack as she prepared for her journey. Before she left, she bade farewell to her siblings. She says, "I'm going to find the black serpent," who looked at her with a mix of horror and disbelief. "She's really going to see the black serpent?" one of them whispered. "Does she not realize he's a meat-eater?" another gasped, her eyes wide with terror. Socio didn't let their words sway her. She was determined, resolute in her strange belief. As she prepared to set off, she overheard her father speak to her mother in a low voice. "Shouldn't we stop her?" he asked, glancing at Socio with mild concern. But her mother merely shrugged, a coldness in her voice. "Let her go. It's one less mouth to feed." Most of the rabbits showed no concern, their gazes drifting back to their own lives as if Socio's journey to her supposed doom was nothing worth noting. With her bundle of dry grass, Socio set off, navigating through forests, climbing mountains, and crossing rushing rivers, her tiny form hopping with determination through every obstacle. Days passed, and as she traveled, her faith in her fated mate did not waver. If he was truly her destiny, she thought, then she was willing to meet it. One fateful day, as she was nearing exhaustion, the sky suddenly opened up, and rain began to pour. Thick droplets soaked the earth and turned the paths to mud. Socio looked up, her little heart sinking. The rain was making her bundle of dry grass soggy and useless. She shivered, feeling the cold seep into her bones as her fur clung to her. Just as despair was beginning to set in, she spotted a dark cave in the distance, the perfect place to shelter from the storm. She didn't think twice, and with a hopeful hop, she hurried toward it. She was so eager for shelter that she barely noticed how slick and unstable the ground had become. As she entered the cave, she stepped on a patch of loose dirt and, in an instant, felt herself slip. The ground beneath her gave way, and she tumbled forward, her small rabbit body rolling helplessly down a slope. Panic filled her mind as she tried to stop herself, but it was no use. She rolled and rolled, further and deeper into the earth. Finally, with a sharp gasp, Socio felt herself falling through open space. She plummeted down, and just before she hit the bottom, an instinctual reaction took over, her body shifted, her form transforming mid-fall. With a crash, Socio landed on the cold, damp ground, her body aching from the fall. As she struggled to get up, she felt a shiver run down her spine, sensing a presence in the darkness. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light, and there, coiled in the shadows of the cave, was a massive black serpent, his scales gleaming faintly in the eerie light. The serpent's gaze fixed on her, and his attention was unmistakably drawn by the noise of her fall. A low, rumbling voice echoed through the cave, sending a chill through Socio's small frame. "Who's there?" he hissed, his tone cold and dangerous. Socio froze, wide-eyed and trembling. Slowly, she raised her head and found herself face to face with the coiled black serpent, known in legends as Yonryo. His scales were as dark as midnight, and his eyes gleamed with a mixture of curiosity and hunger. Gulping nervously, Socio stammered, "Are you, the black serpent?" "Yonryo?" Yonryo, she remembered, the 1,000-year-old serpent. Stories of him had been whispered throughout the rabbit community for generations. It was said that Yonryo had once harbored a powerful desire to ascend to the skies and become a dragon. However, on the day he turned 1,000 years old, he had been unable to pass the final gate, a crucial test that would have granted him the strength and wings to fly. His hopes shattered, Yonryo was forced to remain on Earth, trapped in his serpentine form. Heartbroken and embittered, he retreated to a deep cave, abstaining from food and drink, waiting endlessly for a chance to fulfill his unachieved destiny. But now, a small rabbit stood before him, her fur spotted and unique, a faint curiosity in her eyes that belied the terror she must have been feeling. The cavern echoed with the soft drip, drip, of water trickling from the rocks above. Yonryo's gaze darkened as he sized her up, his eyes glinting with a hungry gleam. "It's been a long time since I last saw a rabbit," he thought, his mouth twisting into a faint, predatory grin. The temptation to taste her, to savor the delicate flavor of her fear, stirred something deep within him. He lowered his head, bringing his massive, scaled face close to hers, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air as he closed the distance between them, his enormous form looming over her. But just as he was about to strike, the little rabbit suddenly spoke up, her voice surprisingly cheerful. "I'm very happy to finally meet you," she said, her voice filled with innocent sincerity. "I'm here to become your mate." Yonryo froze in place, utterly speechless. He stared at her in stunned silence, trying to comprehend what he just heard. Slowly, his massive serpentine body began to shift, shrinking and twisting until he stood before her in his human form, a tall, striking figure with dark hair and piercing eyes. "What?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Socio, sitting happily on her little bundle of dry grass, looked up at him with a radiant smile. "My name is Socio," she said. "As mating season is approaching, I came to find you and become your mate." Her eyes sparkled with an earnestness that left the Serpent King momentarily dumbfounded. She tilted her head, her expression full of curiosity and hope. Was the serpent, perhaps, also waiting for me? Yonryo's mind spun with a mix of confusion and disbelief. Not only did this rabbit willingly come into a serpent's cave, but she came to propose mating? He rubbed his temples, feeling a headache forming. Where do I even begin to address the problems with this situation? And yet, as he looked into her innocent eyes, he couldn't detect even a trace of fear. She gazed up at him with such pure joy, as if she truly believed she was meant to be here with him. Yonryo hesitated, a thought crossing his mind. This rabbit, she's unlike any creature I've ever encountered. It might be more entertaining to play along than to make her my next meal. A sly smile crept onto his face, his handsome features softening as he looked down at her. "Ah, Socio," he said smoothly, his voice warm and gentle. "I have nearly succumbed to eternal slumber waiting for you to come." He flashed her a charming smile, watching with amusement as her cheeks turned a soft pink. "Oh!" Socio squeaked, suddenly shy. Her little heart fluttered with happiness, and without thinking, she transformed back into her rabbit form, hopping around him excitedly. "I'm glad that you were also waiting for me," she exclaimed. "I wanted to meet you as soon as possible." Yonryo observed the little rabbit with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. The absurdity of the situation was almost too much to bear. "Please, call me Yonryo rather than Snake Lord," he told her smoothly, watching her reaction carefully. Sosio's eyes sparkled with joy. "Yonryo, such a beautiful name," she exclaimed, her voice filled with wonder. "I've been curious about your name for a long time." She looked at him with such sincerity that, for a moment, even he wondered if she truly understood what she was asking. Marriage, he thought to himself. Is this rabbit really being sincere? Yonryo felt a strange conflict inside. On one hand, he knew that a serpent and a rabbit could never truly be a couple, it was absurd. Rabbits eat grass, he mused, his gaze drifting to Sosio as she nibbled on her pile of dry grass, and snakes, well, snakes eat rabbits. As he pondered this, he noticed her little tail twitching while she ate, a tempting sight that made something primal stir within him. I haven't felt hunger in years, he thought, but that fluttering tail in front of me is strangely enticing. Just then, Sosio looked up, her mouth full of grass, and asked, "My dear husband, aren't you going to eat as well?" Yonryo blinked, caught off guard by her innocent question. She truly believed they were married, that they were meant to be together. He decided to play along, his mind crafting an elaborate tale to test just how far her devotion would go. Putting on an expression of sorrow, he sighed dramatically, even allowing a fake tear to glisten at the corner of his eye. "I have lived for so long that I have become different from the other serpents," he said, his voice full of mock tragedy. "I fell under a terrible curse that makes it impossible for me to feel true satisfaction or to sate my hunger, unless I bite my mate's tail." He looked at her, his eyes shimmering with feigned sadness. "Surely, no matter how naive you may be, you wouldn't be deceived by something like this, would you?" he asked, half expecting her to shy away or express some doubt. Instead, Sosio's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "Oh, you poor thing," she murmured, her voice full of heartfelt concern. "Then you must have been starving all this time." Sosio glanced back at her small, fluffy tail, trembling slightly as a shiver of fear ran down her spine. But she forced herself to smile, trying her best to look brave. He asked with a smile if she was afraid. If this was the only way to keep her husband from starving, then she would do it. With a determined look, she said, "It's okay. I can't let my dear husband continue to starve. What can I do to make it easier for you to bite my tail?" She even lifted the edge of her little dress, offering him a clearer view. "Is it all right if I show you my tail like this?" Yonryo was speechless. This naive little rabbit was seriously offering herself up without hesitation. He couldn't believe her innocence. Is she really going to let me bite her tail? He thought, both amused and a bit moved by her selflessness. "I have lived like a monk for a whole 1,000 years, he began, his tone softening as he continued to play along. "After I failed to ascend, I hid myself away in this cave, waiting for death to take me. That was until this silly little rabbit came into my life." And as time went by, Sosio and Yonryo spent their days together, finding comfort in each other's company. Slowly, their strange companionship grew into a bond neither had expected. Eventually, they did become husband and wife, against all odds. They shared laughter, warmth, and gentle moments, each finding a sense of belonging they'd never known before. To their surprise, Sosio and Yonryo were soon blessed with children. Their little family was an unusual mix of creatures. Some kids were rabbits, soft and fluffy like Sosio, while others were tiny serpents, sleek and scaled like Yonryo. One day, as Sosio gazed at her newborns, she laughed in delight. "I don't believe it. Look at how small they are," she cooed, gently nuzzling each of her little ones. Yonryo chuckled, his gaze warm. "They are healthy children," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You've done well, my love." Life in the strange little family was peaceful and joyful. Sosio spent her days playing with their children, each one unique and precious in their own way. But one day, as Yonryo watched them from a distance, he was struck by a horrifying sight. A tiny snake child had opened his wide mouth and was eyeing his small rabbit sibling. The rabbit kid, innocent and unaware, stood there, looking up at his snake sibling, completely oblivious to the potential danger. Perhaps we should teach them that their siblings are not food, Yeonryo muttered to himself, feeling a chill at the sight. As the seasons passed, their children began to grow, each one displaying their own unique quirks and personalities. One day, the family was out for a stroll on a wide, beautiful mountain, with Soseo showing her children how to weave flower crowns from wildflowers. All of the children eagerly gathered around to learn, their small hands and tails weaving together in excitement, except for one little snake child, who seemed distracted by something fluttering in the distance. A vibrant butterfly had caught his attention, its delicate wings glistening in the sunlight as it flitted around. Enchanted, the young snake began to slither off, following the butterfly with single-minded focus. His tiny tongue flicked in the air, and he moved forward, mesmerized, unaware that he was heading toward a steep cliff. Soseo noticed him just in time, her heart pounding in fear as she realized the danger. "Come back here, little one," she called, rushing after him, her voice full of worry. "Don't go any further." As the young snake boy finally came to his senses at his mother's urgent call, he realized, to his horror, that he was teetering right on the edge of the cliff. Suddenly, the ground beneath his tiny body began to crumble, breaking away in chunks. He lost his balance, but before he could fall, Soseo stretched out her arm with a desperate cry and pulled him back to safety. However, in doing so, she lost her own footing. The scene shifted back to Yeonryo, the black serpent, as he stood with the other children who came running towards him, their faces pale with fear and tears streaming down their cheeks. They stopped in front of him, panic evident in their young eyes, and one of them cried out, "Father!" Mother saved him, she saved him, but then, she fell off the cliff. Another added, sobbing, there was so much blood on her head. "Father, what should we do?" Without a second's hesitation, Yeonryo rushed toward the cliff where his children had led him. His heart pounded as he slithered as fast as he could, his mind racing with fear and dread. When he finally reached the spot, he saw her, a small figure, his beloved Soseo, lying motionless on the ground, blood staining her soft fur. His eyes widened in horror as he rushed to her side, gathering her in his arms with trembling hands. His voice was shaky as he softly called her name, "Soseo, please, you must open your eyes. Wake up, see? Our children are crying for you." He gently wiped the blood from her face, his heart breaking as he looked at her peaceful yet fragile expression. The children stood nearby, their sobs filling the air, each of them pleading for their mother to wake up. In his desperation, Yeonryo tilted his head to the heavens, his voice filled with sorrow as he pleaded, "Are there any gods out there? Please, save Soseo. I will give you anything, everything I have, just please, don't take her from me." In that moment, a soft light appeared, illuminating the area with a warm, ethereal glow. A godly figure descended from the heavens, looking upon Yeonryo with a serene expression. "I have seen your noble heart, one that wants to save and protect those you love," the god spoke gently. "Yeonryo, you have finally passed the last gate. You have earned the right to ascend and become a dragon. This was your destiny." Yeonryo looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "Please, noble god. I do not wish to ascend if it means losing Soseo. I only wish to stay by her side, to be with her in this life and the next. I have waited thousands of years for this, but the years I spent with Soseo are the only ones that mattered. I do not want to live alone again." The god looked at Yeonryo with compassion, nodding slowly. "Your love is true and pure. Because of your noble heart, I will grant you a choice. You may remain with her in this life, as her equal." The god extended a shimmering pill in his hand, glowing with the essence of life itself. "Take this, and share it with her. This will bind your souls together, so that you may find each other again in every lifetime. In her darkest moment, this gift will revive her." With great reverence, Yeonryo accepted the pill, cradling Soseo gently in his arms. He brought the pill to his lips, pressing it to hers in the faintest, most tender of kisses. As he shared the life-giving essence with her, he whispered softly, "Even if it means waiting in eternity, I will be by your side in every life, my love." She slowly opened her eyes, looking up to see Yeonryo's tear-streaked face. "Why are you crying, Yeonryo?" she asked, her voice weak but filled with warmth. He let out a shuddering breath of relief, holding her close as tears continued to fall. "I was so worried. I thought you'd never open your eyes again." I can't live without you, Socio. Please, stay with me till the end of this life and all the lives to come. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Where would I go without you, my beloved? I am here, and I will stay by your side, always. The children gathered around them, cheering as their mother embraced them, safe and sound. From that day on, the story of the noble-hearted serpent and his brave rabbit spread far and wide. It is said that Yonryo and Socio lived together for a long, happy life with their unique family.